All right, welcome everybody to the weekly Kubernetes community meeting. The date is January 24th, 2019. I will be your host today. My name is George Castro. I work as part of SIG Contributor Experience for VMware. So welcome everybody. We've got a packed agenda. Please do remember that this meeting is being streamed live to YouTube and recorded for the public. So please remember everything you say will be recorded for the public record. I've asked Bob to whack the link to the agenda into the sidebar and Zoom there. If you have it, if you want to follow along with the notes. We are still looking for a note taker. So you'll see the little placeholder there in the notes. So if you want to help us out, please feel free to just dive into the notes and get started. And with that, we are going to have a quick demo, which is Tracing Pod Startup in Kubernetes with David Ashpole. Then Aaron Krickenberger is going to give us a quick release updates. And then we have two SIGs doing updates today, SIG Node with Don Chen and SIG API Machinery with Lava Lamp / David Eads. Okay, and with that, let's get started. David, you have 10 minutes.
Sounds great. Hey, everyone. One sec. My name is David Ashpole. I work at Google, and I attend SIG Node, although this will sound more SIG instrumentation-y than Node-y. First, I want to give a big shout out to my intern, Sam, who actually did all of the work here and whose code I will be running for you today. He is at Monkeyinator on GitHub, and he has a KEP out for review. But his internship is done, so he can't be here to present, so that's why I'm here. So I'll get started. Let's see. It's really hard in Kubernetes today to gauge whether Kubernetes is actually doing what we want it to do in the time that we want it to do it in. Sometimes Kubernetes gets stuck or is slow, and it's hard to figure out where in the process it's stuck or which component is being slow. If you were at KubeCon, or if, like me, you watch lots of KubeCon videos, tracing is a big thing in microservices, and I think it's quite applicable to Kubernetes if we can get it to work. And just to go over kind of the current set of tools that we have, events sort of fill this gap where if something goes badly wrong, you'll get an event, but not everything has an event, and it doesn't necessarily tell you where in the process something is unless you really know what's going on. Most of the time, when I'm debugging things on GKE, I end up having to dig through logs and construct sort of a timeline of events from that. But I have to know which component the problem is in, and that's not always easy. Latency metrics are useful for debugging latency problems, but only if you've pre-configured them ahead of time, and you can't always figure out which latency metric is associated with which pod, for example, because of cardinality problems. Let's see. So that introduces distributed tracing. Distributed tracing, I like to think of as structured, context-aware latency logging. So because it's sort of like logging, you don't have any cardinality issues. Latency is a first-class concept in tracing, so it's really built to solve latency problems. It's context-aware, which means that you propagate this single identifier through all of your components, and then everything, all the instrumentation they produce can be linked back to some process. And it's structured, meaning you can attach metadata to it. Spans are linked together via parent-child relationships, so you can build fun graphs. And when we first set out, we wanted to get something that looked like this working in Kubernetes, where we have the whole pod creation process and then a whole bunch of components that are involved, such as the scheduler, the kubelet, the container runtime. And we were hoping to be able to get something that looked sort of like this, basically. Let's see. And we decided to use OpenCensus for a number of reasons. It's one of a few vendor-agnostic tracing libraries out there. And it has some features that we found were very helpful and I think fit well with what we were trying to do in Kubernetes, but I'll go into that later. For now, you can think of it as instrument once, and then you can push to Zipkin or any of the other tracing backends that exist for Kubernetes. So as quickly as I can, I'll get into a demo. So I'm just running two nodes here, pretty simple. I'm running a couple pods. So first of all, I'm running this Zipkin server, which is pretty standard, and I pulled off the internet somewhere. I have a service in front of it so that I can, oops, where's my, I have a service in front of it so that I can hit it here. And I'm running the Open Census agent as a daemon set. And the thing I want to point you to, sorry, this is in the way, is how simple the configuration for this is able to be. I'm using the standard Open Census exporter, and all I have to do is then point this agent to my Zipkin server, and everything sort of magically takes place. And even in the kubelet, there isn't any configuration here. All I'm telling, when I set up tracing in the kubelet or in other components, all I'm telling it is, hey, I'm the kubelet or I'm the scheduler, for example, and I don't need to do any extra configuration because we're just using the defaults for the Open Census agent. So that's what the agent gets us, is that there's no Stackdriver or AWS code living in the kubelet or anywhere else in Kubernetes. It's all open source, and we let the agent handle the configuration and pushing metrics to different sources, so we can decouple that. Let's see, I'll get back to the demo. So I'm running a Zipkin server, I'm running this agent that pushes to the Zipkin server, and then I'm also running this context injector, which adds trace context as an annotation, so we can do it out of tree. We can do context propagation out of tree for now without having to make changes deep in sort of the etcd and API server stacks. And this is just to get it off the ground, and hopefully someday we won't need this component. But for now, let's see. A very simple pod with a container that sleeps. So just as a simple demo, create this pod, and then we can see that we've added this annotation here, which just has an encoded context. And that way, all of the components that look at this pod and do things on behalf of this pod essentially know how to reflect it back that it came from that pod. Alrighty, so let's see if we have anything in Zipkin. Cool, so we have this, which happened just a couple seconds ago. And this is what we end up with, is we have the top level span, which is for creating the pod. And then we have the scheduler work, which is pretty simple because there's just one node. And then we have all the stuff that the kubelet's doing. And so if there were something that went wrong in here, it would be really easy to tell what part in the process it went wrong in. We used this to debug a bug that we had in GKE where the start container call was taking a really long time, and it turned out to be a container runtime issue. This is really useful for debugging those sorts of problems. Let's see, and then the last part of my presentation I have is just some of the future things that we can do with this. We can, because it's all context-based and contexts are sort of made to be propagated, we can propagate this into plugins like the device plugin to analyze the processes of those. We can propagate it down into the container runtime and get traces from the container runtime. We can push it through the downward API so that init containers, for example, can tell us how they're progressing. And there are just oodles and oodles of way that we can do that. The other things that we hope to do in the future are to use this for other objects other than pods, but we're still sort of thinking that through. And then we're definitely hoping to add tracing for other parts of pod lifecycle, such as updates or deletions. And that should actually be very straightforward. We just haven't done it. And the other cool thing that we can do is that anything else that's context-based, such as context-aware logging, we could then have links between them. So if you have a span and you're wondering, well, what happened during that period of time, you can actually go to the logs for that component and figure out exactly what it was logging. So there's a lot of cool future applications for this, and we're just getting started. Cool, thank you. I'll take questions.
Got about 5 minutes for questions. Patrick Lang asks, is this merged already or are there PRs in review?
The KEP is currently in review, and we haven't opened the PRs as there's still some discussion.
Okay. When we're done with this, if you could drop a link to the KEP in the chat,
yep.
That would be useful for the notes for post.
Yep.
Any other questions?
I actually forgot one part of this, which is, or wait, no, I didn't. So the reason why that annotation was added, which I forgot to circle back on, is because the that mutating emission controller that I had here, all it's doing is adding a trace annotation when you create a pod. So that's what that is for.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. Thanks, David. We appreciate it. And with that, we're going to be moving on to release updates with Aaron Krickenberger. You have 10 minutes, sir.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I am Aaron of SIG Beard. I am your 114 release lead. Today's cat t-shirt is a bad catitude. Because, you know, we're getting close to enhancements freeze, and maybe people are going to start getting cranky, or maybe things will get bumpy. I don't know. So let's talk about where we're at in the release lifecycle. I think I'm going to ramble at you. No, you know what? Let's share my screen so you can follow along with me. It's going to be this desktop. It's going to look really tiny at first. So here are the community meeting notes. As always, I use them as my notes. So we are now at week 3 for the 114 release. That link takes you to this. It's the release schedule, which tells you what's up. We are in week 3, and we are coming up on week 4. The next upcoming milestone is enhancements freeze. What's enhancements freeze, you ask? If you click the link, you see that enhancements freeze says that all enhancements must have an associated issue in the enhancements repo by Tuesday, January 29th. That is, you must be in the 114 milestone. So a little bit more info than that. Everything must have a KEP. I actually have to go PR and update those docs to talk about everything must have a KEP. But basically, you know, we have gone around to all of the different SIGs asking them what work they want to do for this release. And we have asked them if they could please describe that work in the form of a KEP. The KEP being a single document that will hold useful information like what is your test plan for this enhancement? And what is your upgrade, downgrade plan for this enhancement? Things of that nature. So we have a PR out to discuss the KEP template. I feel like I see a hand up from somebody. Okay, so if you have comments on getting the KEP template right, please take a look at this PR. So going back to the meeting notes. But Aaron, I hear you asking, you're telling us we should have all of our KEPs landed by Tuesday, but there's still this open PR that's changing the template, and it's Thursday, and it hasn't even merged yet. Are you insane? Yes, I am. I have a bad catitude. But I kind of feel like we can collectively agree as humans to try and move this process along. So what we're asking for is, can you get a PR open with a KEP? Preferably, could you get that PR merged? Preferably, could we say that KEP is in an implementable state, which basically is like, yeah, everything looks good, you're pretty much ready to go. If we can't do that by feature freeze, we are going to kick it out of the 114 milestone, but that's okay because we have an exceptions process. And the exception process is you basically say, oops, sorry, we didn't get all the things. We'd really like to sneak our enhancement back into the release past this deadline, and here's the reason why. and we're going to take a really lenient stance on if the reason why is because we didn't quite get the KEP stuff locked down. I apologize if this is going to be a little bit bumpy, but that's the way it is. We're going to be a little bit firmer on what's supposed to be in the KEPs and what they look like and all of that as we get closer to code freeze, because the idea here is if the KEPs are setting up the goalposts for you to kick your field goal through of shipping your enhancement, sorry, I'm terrible at analogies, then we want to make sure those goalposts don't move before code freeze, so we have a good idea of whether or not it makes sense to continue trying to land your code before code freeze, or maybe suggest that we should stop and focus on the stability of the code base prior to code freeze. As always, you can take a look at this milestone here, which shows every enhancement issue that's currently slated for the 1.14 release. Our wonderful enhancements lead, Claire Lawrence, is tracking all of this in a spreadsheet, as our enhancements leads are wont to do. And I think the stats that she gave me are that at the moment we have roughly 41 enhancements. 19 of them are in an alpha state, 13 of them are in a beta state, 6 of them are in a stable state. My personal preference, it'd be great to see more of those on the more stable end of the spectrum and less of them on the alpha end of the spectrum, but that's just me as a human being. Of these 41 enhancement issues, 19 of them don't have KEPs right now, so you'll probably be hearing from me and Claire and some of the enhancement shadows that she has working with her about getting that taken care of. Okay, going up to what we have done so far a little bit, our release team has shadows now. We're waiting on PRs to clarify the CI signal shadows and the release branch manager shadows. But thank you everybody who signed up to participate, and looking forward to working with all of you. We also have a release notes draft out. That's this link here. And so if you're working on any of these particular features from any of these particular SIGs and this looks a little weird to you, come talk to our release notes lead. Let's see. From a CI signal perspective, CI signal also generally maintains something. In a couple releases past, CI signal has been maintained by using a Google Doc. This may not be what we use going forward. We're still kind of figuring it out, but here is the CI signal report from my CI signal lead this week. But the TLDR is that we, as a release team, watch the release master blocking dashboard. That's what I just clicked the link to. By the way, did y'all notice TestGrid's like summary page now has these really awesome like icons here that are like big and bold, so you can really see what's green and really see what's red. And oh god, there's so much purple for flaky. But hey, it's a little bit more obvious. So this is the dashboard we're paying attention to. If this is broken, expect people to come ask you why it's broken for your particular test. I think that is all I have. I will stop sharing my screen and ask if anybody has any questions.
Anything point release wise as far as previous releases?
I personally don't know of anything.
Okay.
Something else did pop into mind. That lovely release master blocking dashboard, I showed you one of the criteria that the CI signal, myself, and some of my shadows are working on. We want to make sure that every job on that board is owned by somebody. And by owned, I mean it has a TestGrid alert set up. For those of you who don't know, TestGrid can email or send an email to one or multiple email addresses if a given job fails more than n times in a row, for whatever definition of n makes the most sense to you. It can also email out if the results are stale by more than n hours, again, for whatever makes sense for you. And so we're going to try playing around with making sure that if the job's on that dashboard, it's got to have an email address associated with that, preferably an email address that belongs to a SIG, even more preferably that belongs to a SIG that is responsive to test failures. There are SIGs out there that do this today for some of their individual dashboards. Shout outs to SIG Storage and SIG Networking and SIG Cluster Lifecycle for doing that. This is something you can absolutely do on your own, but you're going to be voluntold by SIG Release, And if we can't seem to find the appropriate owners, we're going to suggest maybe those jobs don't quite belong on release master blocking until somebody willing to say they should be blocking steps up to maintain them. So look for info about that later. Okay, now I'm done.
Okay, any questions for Aaron? Awesome, thanks. We'll see you next week. With that, we're moving on to SIG updates. We have 2 SIG updates today. First up is SIG Node with Dawn.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, let me share my screen. Just 1 second. Can you see my screen?
Not yet.
No, I can't.
I can't.
Okay. Okay, let me just share my desktop now.
No worries. We're running ahead of schedule, so.
I should thank you to David and also Aaron then.
There we go.
Yes.
Perfect. Yep.
Cool. Okay, so since my last update on that's already, I think a quota passed by. So I just opened my old slides and look at how much progress. I feel so proud for our community. So this again for the just general of the SIG administration updates. So we still hold off the weekly signal the meeting regularly at every Tuesday, 10 a.m. And the agenda and also notes, it is linked there. And also we record all the meeting and pushed all the record to the YouTube. And if you are interested in topic, and just go find those. And then we also try to, New Year, we try to also every meeting and we decided action item and the summary out what we discuss. And if there's the pending issue, then we summarize the action item and what's the next step. So that's the new protocol we try to driving for the signal meeting. So hopefully we can make a more vertical improvement on the decision-making process. Then additional, on the signal, then we also have the bi-weekly or maybe monthly, depending on the topic. We have the resource management working group, and it's on every Wednesday, 11 a.m. Pacific time. So next, last time, sorry. So last time I proposed we update our SIG scope, and so we continue evolve our SIG node scope. This is the latest version. So obviously like Kubernetes and the pod API related stuff, pod lifecycle, container lifecycle related stuff, node API, and together with the SIG architecture, a lot of the API, like for example, for the debug container API, we discussed and decided, and then we send them, direct them to the SIG architecture and to discussing. Same thing for some like the SIG storage API, CSI, there are some related to the SIG node. So we discuss and approve and sign on, and then send them direct to the SIG architecture for the cross SIG and the review. And then we also have the node management, including node controller, node life performance, scalability, and reliability. And reliability especially, and last in Q4, we have a lot of enhancement on the node problem detector. So we improve of the node detector and also add new problem detectors and detect the new issues. And then there's the container runtimes. There are a lot of progress on the container runtimes, and beyond the CLI, beyond the containerd CRI. And we also proposed last Q4, we proposed the containerd shim version 2 API to the containerd community, which is well accepted by the community. So which is currently using by the Kata. And also even like there's the and discussing with how we move to Windows support to the container D shim version 2 API. So there's the many progress collaborate with the containerd and OCI community, all this community. Then there's the device management and image management. Recently, we also, on the image management, we recently also have the new proposal and discussing with the containerd community and on how we are going efficient management the remote image. There are many progress made there, and thanks for Containerd community and collaboration, all those kind of the effort to help this move forward on the node. And then there's the node level resource management together with the SIG scheduler team. So there's the many progress made it and many ongoing discussing, include of the disk quota and PAIDs user and also the topology aware of the scheduling. All those kind of things ongoing and made a lot of progress and it's not finalized yet. So there's other things, issues related to the nodes and just keep things working and monitoring. And there's also new, we have the proposal a while back on the core metrics API to affect of the Kubernetes monitoring pipeline. So there's the engineer working on those kind of area and try to propose and solve today's observability and debuggability issue. So, and then they have node level the isolation and the security issue, and also is, and the last one it is the host OS and the kernel interaction. So all those kind of things, and it is in the signal the scope. So let me quick update about the accomplishment in the Q4 last year. Q4 it is a short quarter. And also there are the 2 KubeCon. So, but I opened my last time updates and what is the plan? I think we made a lot of steady progress on every area we mentioned. And the first thing is runtime class. Runtime class, it is alpha in V112. And but in the Q4, actually, we made a lot of progress on the integration with Kata and GVisor through the Containerd and CRAIL both. So that earlier I mentioned the Containerd share version 2, we proposed to the community. Actually, it is in Q4 and made dramatic progress and the boost of the performance on the Kata. So a lot of the community benefited by those kind of things. And then we also have the efficiency heartbeat alpha release in the 113 and SIG scaled pick up the work right now to do those benchmark and see the significant improvement on the scalability. And then another one, it is the Windows support. And we help together with the SIG Windows, we try to get Windows Node GA. And please notice this is Windows Node GA, and it's not the Windows platform as additional platform supported by Kubernetes. So in the Q4, there's a lot of progress made on the testing, and I attached the 2 test grid. One, it is on top of the GCP. Another one is on Azure. There's a lot of progress, automated Windows related test work. And also there's the test result. Engineering is working detail, especially on the node, Windows node related conform test. And we look into those things and debug those kind of things, figure out what's the problem. So then in the Q4, we promote the process namespace sharing to beta, which it is the prerequisite for our debug container effort. And then we address the API concerns, and we talk to the, earlier I mentioned that we talked to the SIG architecture and the SIG API machinery, and we reach a high-level agreement on the API for the debug container. So this is the Q4. We are focus area. Some it is what if you are interested in the 114 feature, what we promise to deliver. I have the link there. I share these slides to the Kubernetes dial. So there's the link there, and there also have some long-term project, and we have the small milestone, but not necessary for the beta, the alpha, beta, or GA. So we are in the Q4, we are focused on some graduate and promote existing feature to next phase. And for example, if efficient heartbeat, and we plan to promote that to beta, and runtime class, and we plan to promote it to beta. And the last week of, this week of the SIG node, we discuss those categories and what is requirement for runtime class to the beta. So if you are interested, please take a look at the SIG node, the meeting notes. And we also plan to graduate a couple feature, and non-existing feature, and also have the production usage to the GA. For example, huge page, and also Node OS architecture, beta label to the GA. And especially we want to promote that to the GAs because we want to, before we resolve off to the issue, API issue, and also class lifecycle issue and the scheduling issue, all those kind of issue, to support additional OS Windows. And we want to have still using the Node label to scheduling of the Windows workload to the Windows nodes. And so there are existing feature in the beta for long time, so we plan to promote it to that GA. But we also plan to deprecate that one eventually. In the current plan, it is in the 17 release, so we can switch to the runtime class, which we've been talking about for a while. And we also focus on the node level isolation, the rest pits, and the user namespace. This quota effort is going on, and especially on the process pits, and we want to have some like the concrete design and the proposal, and so we could move forward. So again, for the Q1 Windows and Node, both SIG groups will want to coordinate more deeply and to GA Windows Node support. Again, Windows Node GA is not like the Windows platform. And then we also start another round of the design discussing and review for the in-place pod resource updates. It has been for a while, and we already have the VPA and version, but it's not in-place update. So we see the increasing demanding for those features. So we put effort on that one in this quota together with the auto scaling and scheduler SIG groups. And another one, it is just the CPU and the device core scheduling, which is also called the topology aware scheduling. So mostly is the Intel and also community focus on those things. This is the resource management working group kind of focus area. And we also want to continuously improve of the debuggability at the node level. And there's the effort debug containers. We want to hopefully this time, since we solved that API problem as the major blocker, so hopefully this time we can make progress on the debug container, and we can have the alpha. And also just give the demo on the tracing. So that's the engineering is working on, and together with intern in-house. And he just gave the demo. We want to push this to the community and move forward. And the last thing is just keep everything running. So we have the issues, bugs, test failures, and we put effort. So every quarter we have some effort to keep those kind of things. So this is the Q1. And also some it is even beyond Q1. This is the current what we are looking at. Okay, that's any question here?
Any questions going once, going twice?
Your friendly 114 release lead here on a huge pages note. I think somebody had asked about whether or not they needed to write a KEP for huge pages, given that it's been around for basically ever, and there's a design proposal and lots of docs on it. Yes, you do. No, I haven't seen one. Somebody just asked about this in the SIG release channel. Hi, Michelle. For things that have a lot of prior documentation on like why this, why not that, why this way, why not that way, the things that design proposals typically cover, I'm okay with a link for that. I'm really asking for KEPs just to spell out the graduation criteria and the test plan.
Yes, Aaron, I understand. I think the last time we did have the discussing at the Signal meeting, and 2 weeks ago. Yes, yep. So I'm going to follow with the engineer on this topic. So then make sure we follow the process. And thanks to join the Signal and to explicitly share the progress with the engineer community. Yes.
Yeah. No problem. Thanks.
All right. Any other questions before we move on? All right. Thanks, Don. Moving on, we have SIG API Machinery with David Eads.
Hi. I can't share my screen while someone else is sharing it.
Just one sec. Sorry. Let's
problem.
go ahead.
And that right there. All right.
Perfect.
You should be seeing a very plain looking slide deck. So this is David Eads. I'm a co-lead for API Machinery, and I'll just briefly take you through the update. As Don mentioned, Q4 is short. So last release cycle, we delivered CRD webhook conversion for alpha in 1.13. If you're using custom resources, please look at this. Please try turning it on, using it to be able to give us good feedback. It is hopefully a solution that will let 95% of use cases work. If it doesn't work for yours, be sure to let us know. We also introduced dynamic typed informers and listers. So we had a dynamic client, but it was very difficult to actually build a controller off of the dynamic client. And now we have informers and listers like every other client that gets generated. So it should make it much easier to develop a dynamic controller. Looking forward to what we're planning for this release. We're continuing our work on extensibility, and we are investigating a path for admission webhooks to reach GA. This does not mean we are planning for them to be GA this release. We're getting the path. If it happens that that path looks like it's going to fit, we will finish out the KEP, which will hopefully have a nice template, and move that forward. They have been in beta since last 2017 Q4, and they've worked fairly well, but there are a few cases we know are missing. The server-side apply work that has been ongoing for several months now, we are planning to bring in as alpha. There is a pull open. It's had a KEP for a long time, and it will be well gated off. But again, if it's a thing you're interested in, and you probably are, once we ship it, it would be good for people to try it while it's in alpha and give good feedback. We are continuing work on the storage migration tool that we started back in 3Q last year. There are 2 discovery API changes that are linked. I linked their KEPs here, and we are moving forward with those to make the tool more efficient and easier to manage. We are also going to deprecate a couple features that have been on the chopping block for a while, right? We have deprecated Swagger JSON file that I don't think anyone has used for a long time. This is not the normal OpenAPI. OpenAPI is still going to stay. OpenAPI is still going to be aggregated. This is specifically about the old Swagger JSON file. We are also going to remove initializers. For those who remember, initializers and admission webhooks came about to solve similar problem domains. And we think that the admission webhooks are easier to conceptually understand, even though they have different limitations. So we are going to remove initializers. Not clear whether that's going to happen in this release or next. We are still working through that path. They never made it past alpha, which makes it a lot easier to remove. The last thing that we are looking at is API request fairness. This has come up a fair number of times from different SIGs. There is a design out that we are looking at, not for implementation this quarter, but if you have comments on the design, this would be a good time to do it before we start taking it through more thorough review and starting the KEP process for it. If you have questions, we have a bunch of links here. Daniel is back in a week and a half, I think. Obviously, I'm here now, and we have our regularly scheduled SIG meetings every other week, linked out of our README.
Awesome, great. Any questions for David? All right, moving on to announcements. Aaron, looks like you're up first with a few bullets. You want to speak to them, or you want me to read them?
I can speak to them. Let me find them. Okay, so first off, I don't think either of the appropriate people are here, but I wanted to say, announce that the GitHub administration team, great gratefully thanks Garrett Rodriguez for his service on the team, and is welcoming Nikita. I'm sorry, I'm not even going to bother pronouncing your last name. I'll get it right someday. But welcome Nikita to the GitHub admin team. Yay. Okay, one of the reasons I'm super excited about this, for what it's worth, the GitHub admin team is a team of 6 people who have owner access to all of the GitHub orgs, all of the 150, maybe it's even 160 something GitHub repos. So these are people that you really don't want to accidentally fat finger a button, and who are really detail oriented and are responsive. And I feel like we're a little bit clustered up right now. Prior to this change, we had 4 people from Google working on this team and 4 people from the Pacific time zone. So Nikita bumps that off. She doesn't work for Google, she works for Lutzi, and she works in India. So she's not on Google Standard, I mean Pacific Standard Time. So we're looking to kind of diversify the team a little bit. So I wanted to thank everybody for helping this process along. Super excited. Okay, next little announcement is that you remember I talked about the steering committee thinking about doing a public meeting last week. I just wanted to say that's actually happening, but next week. So I linked to the steering email thread where we said, yeah, we're going to do that, and stay tuned for details. George, I'll let you read the shout-outs. It feels weird for me to read them.
All right. So we have a channel in Slack called #shoutouts. If you see someone doing something above and beyond the Call of Duty in Kubernetes throughout the week, just mention them in there, and then the host for that week's meeting will aggregate them and read them out. So Aaron Krickenberger would like to thank Ben the Elder for fixing yesterday's Prow outage, even though he wasn't on call. And then he wrote up a post-mortem, which I've dropped the link there in the notes. At Edouard, wave, say hello so the camera sees you, for reaching out to all the SIGs and his continued work on revamping the Kubernetes dev guide. Just a quick info from Edouard. He's our outreachy intern who's going to be working on revamping our developer guide. Those of you that have been keeping track, we currently have a devil directory in the community repo. That's a bunch of stuff that we haven't touched in a long time. And Edouard is going to be going around and trying to help us organize that. So please welcome him. Moving on. Shout outs to Hippie Hacker, Tim Hawking, and Brendan Burns for transitioning the first piece of project infrastructure to the community. So this is DNS. You should have seen this announcement on the devil list. And just a quick editor's note, you can all stop emailing Tim Hawking for your favorite subdomains on the Kubernetes.io domain. Shout out to Mr. Bobby Tables for putting together a community documentation style guide, which you can find in that link that he's popped on there. That's kind of helping ensure that when we're working on our READMEs and stuff like that for all your SIGs and all the documentation that's in that repo to kind of make some sense out of it. Arambe Alarcon, I hope I got that right, has hosting facilities in Mexico City and is looking to start a meetup. Follow the link if you're interested in helping out. This one's interesting. This has been popular. Henning Jacobs is collecting a list of Kubernetes failure stories. And I thought that was really interesting. It's kind of a service to the community when someone talks about how they failed. And he's collecting a list of talks from KubeCon and around the world that are outlining failure stories. So I think that's really useful. Definitely a lot of good talks and lessons to be learned at that link. And just a reminder that you can give a demo to this call like we did in the first 10 minutes if you're interested in that. See the top of this document. And you're also invited to host this meeting as well. We have a rotating set of hosts and are always looking for new shiny faces to help. So ping myself or Paris if you're interested in that. And lastly, we open #talk-proposals in Slack. I know it's past the KubeCon CFP, but we figured it'd be good to have a channel that's open year-round. If you're looking for help for a submission, or you want to share slides with someone, or you need a review, or you need help with your, whatever it is. So if you're a Kubernetes speaker, feel free to hop in there and organize yourselves. And with that, does anyone have any last-minute things they would like to add to the community meeting before we break? Going once?
Actually, I had a quick question. Maybe this will just reveal my ignorance. You mentioned KubeCon CFP had closed. I know it closed for Barcelona. Does anybody know if the CFP for Shanghai or China or whatever you want to call it is still open.
It's February 1st, I think.
Thank you.
Cool.
And I'll go ahead and start just putting whatever the next deadline for the next KubeCon is in the note template so we can fix that. Anything else? All right, and with that, have 15 minutes back. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you all next week.
Happy Catter Day.